Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Welcome to this session of Quran for Ramadan. Today we will read one verse from Surah Ahzab, which is a very comprehensive verse, and it speaks about how pairing will be made in the hereafter and how people who are worthy of being paired in the hereafter display certain traits which make them eligible for this union. So the verse reads, إن المسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات والقانتين والقانتات والصادقين والصادقات والصابرين والصابرات والخاشعين والخاشعات والمتصدقين والمتصدقات والصائمين والصائمات والحافظين فروجهم والحافظات والذاكرين الله كثيرا والذاكرات أعد الله لهم مغفرة وأجرا عظيما. However, all his favors and blessings are not confined to this house only. In reality, men and women who are Muslims, true believers, worshippers, truthful, patient, humble before God, charitable, who fast, guard their private parts, and remember God in abundance, God has prepared for them also forgiveness and a great reward. So you can see as the verse starts off, it connects to the previous section by this parenthetical expression that all these favors are not confined to this house only, referring to the house of the Prophet. The previous verses have been discussing the household life of the Prophet and the way he and his wives were brought into disrepute by the hypocrites of that era and how they have been given certain special directives. So after that, it has been said that women who and men who have these traits and who have these qualities, they are also ones who shall end up in paradise and who shall be rewarded by the Almighty in a profound way. So the characteristics that you can see are being displayed before you, and for each of them, both the masculine gender and the feminine gender is highlighted, and this is a very special style of the Quran. In most cases, you'll find the Quran mentioning the male gender, the masculine gender more prominently, and it subsumes unto that masculine gender a mention of the feminine gender as well. But in areas where the feminine gender has to be highlighted also, we find this special mention in which both men and women, they are pointed out separately. And this is one area in Surah Ahzab where it is done so, as you have seen from the translation. So the words al-Muslimina wal-Muslimat, they are the very first expression. It says that men and women who are Muslims. So the word Muslim, we know it actually means or refers to someone who submits to the Almighty, who submits to the command of the Almighty. And the greatest manifestation of that submission can be seen, dear viewers, if you remember how Prophet Abraham did so at the command of the Almighty when he saw in his dream repeatedly that he was to sacrifice his son. And when this happened, he actually communicated this dream to his son. The son was no more than 14 or 15 years old. And he, being a future prophet, understood that this is something from God. God wants this sacrifice to take place. And although the symbolism in this sacrifice shown in the dream was that Abraham was required to dedicate his son Ishmael for the cause of God, dedicate his son for purely these tasks and not let him venture forth into any temporal affairs. But the Almighty, of course, did not say this in words. He communicated this in the form of a dream, and dreams of the Prophet are all symbolic in nature. And this symbolism, as you can clearly see, is something which always takes place in a way that it needs interpretation. So the words which were then used in the Quran are exactly the same as the word Muslim has been used here for the feminine and the masculine gender. So the words were falamma aslama watallahu jil jamil, which means when both of them submitted to the Almighty, both of them showed their obedience to the Almighty, and then they ventured forth the way we know, and we know Abraham himself wanted to just fulfill this command of the Almighty. He did not interpret it in the symbolic sense, which was actually what was required. He actually interpreted it in the literal sense, which shows his huge stature and the way he fulfilled this command of the Almighty in a literal way. So this is the pinnacle of accepting something from God and being a prophet of God. Of course, this was even more difficult. And remember, Ishmael was someone who was given to him when he was 86 years old, and he was his firstborn. So to sacrifice a firstborn at the behest of the Almighty is something which one can only shudder when we think of what Abraham must have gone through. But then this is how the Almighty wants us, that He wants us to submit to His command, because submission to this command is something which is worthy and worthwhile of our own human stature. God gives us commands and directives which are in accordance with our nature, and they are meant for our own betterment. They are meant for us to be elevated, and of course, win more reward and laurels from the Almighty. And then the words are wal mu'minina wal mu'minat. So the next step is actually delineated here, and that is that these are true believers, true men and true women who show this belief in the Almighty. They just don't profess faith and just don't submit to the command that is given to them, but more than that, they do so in a wholehearted way. They are convinced in their own hearts. They are true believers, and they are true believers in the sense that they don't question any directive of the Almighty. They know that the directive given has a lot of benefit and expediency for them. So they forthwith uh, submit to the command of the Almighty. The faith that they have in the Almighty is so enormous, is so profound, that this actually is bordering on conviction, as if they are seeing something and believing after that. Although, of course, they don't see anything like that. They see something from the mind's eye, and but that mind's eye is so perspicacious. It's so profound in its observation, that it is as if they are observing the Almighty and therefore following His command. So this is what faith is. And remember, we have also been discussing this, that this faith is not blind at all. The way the Quran wants us to profess this faith is to understand the directives of the Almighty, and it has given those directives in a way that every single directive is reasoned out. It is rationally explained, so that that faith becomes a vibrant reality. It becomes a reality through which we can connect to God, and not just blind in nature. And then the next trait which is mentioned is was-sabirina was-sabirat. Uh, in fact, before that, I've missed one trait, and that is wal qanitina wal qanitat, which means that they are worshippers. They are people who bend down to the will of the Almighty. The word kunut in the Arabic language means that they prostrate and kneel before the Almighty, not only outwardly, but inwardly as well. So, this obedience, which is shown inwardly by, of course, the heart being submissive to the command of the Almighty, is something which is a pinnacle of obedience. It's not just the outer form of a person which submits to the Almighty. His inner form, his heart and mind are also submitting to the Almighty. And this is what is meant by al-qanitina wal-qanitat, that they worship the Almighty. And this worship is not just limited to the prayer. Their life is an embodiment of worship, which means that they always think themselves to be people who have been creatures who have been created by the Almighty, in a way that everyone realizes that we have someone who is far beyond our perception vis-a-vis our eyes, but He is someone that we can really come close to through His attributes and His dealings. So, al-qanitina wal-qanitat, when they are able to know these attributes of the Almighty, the immediate response is that they regard Him to be their God. They regard Him that they have to submit not only in the form of the directives that are given to them, but also in all worship rituals, because this is the pinnacle of humanity, that you realize who you are, and at the same time thank your Creator and prostrate before Him. The next thing which is mentioned is as-sadiqina was-sadiqat, which means that they are truthful. This trait, of course, is something which is perhaps the foundation of all human traits, and which is that they speak the truth, they side by the truth, they abide by the truth. They are not led into any falsehood when they see that they have to make a choice between righteousness and wrongdoing. Vice and virtue is something that we have to decide every second of our life. And people who are as-sadiqeen was-sadiqat, they always choose the right path. They are truthful not only in their claim, but they are truthful in the life they adopt, not only through their own actions, but through their own verbal actions as well. So, not just through their deeds, but through their verbal commitments as well. So, to be a person who is a man of his words is a person who is always honoring what he or she has said to the other person, has made a commitment, and come what may, he speaks the truth or she speaks the truth, because this truth is basically God's representative on earth. When we speak the truth, we are actually also gearing ourselves to become seekers of the truth. So, if you want to be a person who is truthful, the best way is to become a seeker of the truth, because in that case, truth will become something cherishable. And whenever it comes our way, we leap to grab it. So, if we are seekers of the truth, it will become easier for us to accept the truth, however tough and difficult it might be. And then it says, wal khashi'ina wal khashi'at. Before that, it says, was sabirina was sabirat, which of course means that they are patient, they are steadfast, they persevere in the life that they are given. So remember, the word sabr in the Arabic language actually means a person who stares the challenge in its eye, who takes up the challenge, who does not get bogged down by any adverse circumstances. It's not something which is a sign of weakness. Patience in the Arabic language, or to be more precise, the word sabr in the Arabic language actually is something which describes the steadfastness, the commitment, the toughness that a person has to face any adversity that comes his way. So we also know that the Quran at one instance has mentioned this very clearly and distinctly, that basically it is this steadfastness in which a person accepts the will of God Almighty and at the same time perseveres on what the truth is, even if it is something that inflicts some harm on him, or if it is able to, I mean, even lead him into some sort of loss. So the Quran says, in such cases also, they are steadfast, they persevere, and they look the challenge in the eye. So, wal khashiina wal khashiat, which means that they are humble before the Almighty. Again, this is something which is the opposite of arrogance. This is not something which has to be taken lightly. To be humble before the Almighty means actually to realize that we are creatures. We are not people who are superior to other people. We are people who are humble in our own stature, and therefore there is only one supreme being whom we have to acknowledge, and that is the Almighty Himself. So it is in the fitness of things that we realize His superiority, His supremacy, His sovereignty, and submit to Him in this humble way. And then it is said, wal mutasaddiqina wal mutasaddiqat. So mutasaddiqeen and mutasaddiqat, these are traits which mention the charitability of a person. The person who looks after other people the way they should be looked after. He's not just concerned with his own self. He's always looking out for opportunity in which he is able to help other people around him. Wasaimina wasaimat. They are people who offer these who observe these optional fasts. So it's not referring here to the month of Ramadan, through which we are incidentally passing. Actually, it refers to optional fasts that the Prophet would often keep. He would at least keep three fasts, observe three fasts every month, and then there were special occasions also in which he would fast. So fasting in itself, especially if you do it outside of the month of Ramadan, it gives you that special connection with God, and also inculcates that all important trait of patience. وَالْحَافِظِينَ فُرُوجَهُمْ وَالْحَافِظَاتِ. They are ones who guard their private parts. Of course, this means that they are ones who wear dresses which are appropriate, which are decent, and in no way are in any way display their private parts. They wear a decent dress because this is something which reflects their inner decency, how modest they are. Their external being is something which never displays those private parts. In fact, what is to be hidden is hidden very, very specifically and specially. And other than that, the dress worn is worn out of modesty and chastity. And finally, it is said, وَالذَّاكِرِينَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا وَالذَّاكِرَاتِ. That they are people who remember God in abundance. I mean, men and women who remember God in abundance. Of course, this means that it is not just in the times of the prayer that they remember God. It is at all times So when they see some blessing of God, they say Alhamdulillah. When they see something glorious, they say Subhanallah. When they do something bad or they sin, they say Astaghfirullah. So all these utterances that we say, at times we say without even thinking, but the real thing is that we should be mindful and watchful. When we say these words, they actually should be coming out of our heart as a response to some outside observation. And this is precisely what is meant here. So the Quran says finally, أَعَدَّ اللَّهُ لَهُمْ مَغْفِرَةً وَأَجْرًا عَظِيمًا, that God is prepared for such people who have these traits, forgiveness and a great reward in the hereafter. So with this, we come to an end to our discussion on this verse, and we can now open the forum for our Q&A segment.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad, for a very detailed and beautiful explanation. My first question comes from Samra Haroon. Please unmute your mic and ask your question.
جی السلام علیکم سر میرا ایک کوشچن ہے کہ میں نے صحیح بخاری میں کل ایک حدیث پڑھی کہ وہ جبرائیل علیہ السلام جو تھے وہ حضور صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم سے ملنے کا وعدہ کیا لیکن وہ آئے نہیں، تو نیکسٹ ٹائم جب وہ آئے تو حضور صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم نے ان سے پوچھا کہ آپ کیوں نہیں آئے تھے، تو انہوں نے بتایا کہ کچھ تصاویر مورتیں تھیں اور کتے کا ذکر کیا. تو جب انہوں نے تحقیق کی دیکھا تو حضرت امام حسن یا حسین کا پلہ اس میں لکھا ہے کہ وہ تھے، تو ان کو نکال دیا. تو اس کا مطلب وہ ان کا پیٹ تھے، پیٹ جانور ہوگا.
جی بالکل ایسا ہی ہوگا کہ جو ان کو بلانگ کرتا ہے.
جی تو سر میں نے رامدی صاحب کا سنا ہے کہ وہ کہہ رہے تھے کہ اگر سدھایا ہوا کتا ہو تو اس کے لیے یہ نہیں ہے کہ وہ فرشتے نہیں آتے، بیکاز ان کو سکھایا ہوا ہوتا ہے کہ مطلب گند ہر جگہ نہیں کرنا اور اس طرح سے وہ ہوتے ہیں. تو لیکن جو مطلب عام گلی کے کتے ہوتے ہیں ان کے لیے ہے. تو اس سے مجھے تھوڑا کنفیوژن ہو رہا ہے. جی
دیکھیں جس چیز کی طرف آپ اشارہ کر رہی ہیں، بنیادی طور پہ یہ سمجھ لیجئے کہ کتے بھی اسی طرح کے پیٹ ہیں، رکھے جا سکتے ہیں، جیسے آپ بلی رکھ سکتے ہیں، جیسے پرندے رکھ سکتے ہیں، جو بھی آپ نے پیٹ سوچے ہوئے ہیں. عام طور سے کتوں کے بارے میں جو ہمارا رویہ ہے وہ یہ ہے کہ شاید وہ ناپاک ہوتے ہیں، وہ پلید ہوتے ہیں، اور جہاں وہ ہوتے ہیں وہاں فرشتے نہیں آتے. تو اس غلط فہمی کو غامدی صاحب نے دور کیا ہے، اگر آپ نے ان کی چیزیں سنی ہیں یا پڑھی ہیں، اور یہ بتایا ہے کہ یہ خاص موقع اور محل کی بات ہے. یہ تمام کتوں کے بارے میں نہیں ہے، بلکہ وہ کتے جو سدھائے ہوئے نہیں ہیں، جو ٹرین نہیں ہیں، پوٹی ٹرین نہیں ہے، اور جگہ جگہ وہ گھر کے اندر گند کر دیتے ہیں. تو یہ تو خود انسانوں کے لیے ہی ایک ان ہائیجینک چیز ہے. کجائیے کہ فرشتے ہوں، تو وہ ایسا ہی ہوا ہے کہ کسی موقع پہ کسی پلے نے یہ ان کے پلنگ کے نیچے اس طرح سے اپنے آپ کو ریلیف کر لیا تھا، اور جبریل اس لیے نہیں آئے کیونکہ زیادہ حساس تھے وہ. تو اسی وجہ سے یہ خیال پیدا ہو گیا کہ جیسے ہر کتا جو ہے جس گھر میں ہوگا وہاں پہ فرشتے داخل نہیں ہوں گے. یہ ایک واقعہ ہے جس کو اصل میں لوگوں نے جنرلائز کر لیا اور تمام کتوں کو واصل جہنم کر دیا اور ان کو ایک ناپاک قرار دے دیا اور پلید قرار دے دیا. ایسا نہیں ہے. عام کتے جن کو آپ پراپر ٹرین کر سکیں وہ تو بعض دفعہ بہت بڑی خدمت کرتے ہیں. میں ایسے لوگوں کو جانتا ہوں، بہت بوڑھے لوگوں کو، ملک سے باہر رہتے ہیں، جو جن کا جو تنہا آسرا ہے وہ بعض دفعہ کتا ہی ہوتا ہے. وہ اتنا اچھا ٹرین کیا ہوتا ہے کہ وہ اپنی مالک کے اشارے پہ جا کے خانے سے دوا بھی نکال کے لے آتا ہے اور دروازہ بھی حد تک کھول دیتا ہے. کئی کام ایسے ہیں جو ان کو وہ ٹرین کر دیتے ہیں، یہ جو خاص طور سے شیپرڈ ہوم ڈاگز ہوتے ہیں. تو اس وجہ سے یہ ان کے بارے میں ایسی کوئی وعید نہیں ہے. آپ کتوں کو گھروں میں رکھ سکتے ہیں، ان کو آپ ٹرین کریں، اور ان کی وہی حیثیت ہے کہ جو کسی بھی اور پیٹ کی ہے. ایک مزید وضاحت آپ کو یہ کر دوں کہ اس کے لعاب کے بارے میں، یعنی جو سلائیوا ہے اس کے بارے میں کہا جاتا ہے کہ وہ ناپاک ہے. ایسی بھی کوئی بات نہیں ہے. اس کے بارے میں ایک روایت ہے جس سے یہ غلط فہمی پیدا ہوتی ہے، جس میں یہ کہا گیا کہ کتے نے ایک برتن میں منہ مار لیا تھا، تو پیغمبر صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم نے کہا کہ آپ اس کو اچھی طرح سے مانجیں، دھوئیں، اور آخری مرتبہ اس کو اسکرب بھی کریں، جس سے لوگوں نے سمجھا کہ جیسے یہ کوئی ناپاک چیز ہے. لیکن اگر آپ روایات کو جمع کریں تو معلوم ہوگا کہ وہ ایک بیمار کتا تھا، ریبٹ ڈاگ جسے کہتے ہیں، اس کو ریبیز ہوتی ہیں، اور وہ اس کے نتیجے میں ظاہر ہے کہ اگر وہ صاف نہ کریں اس یوٹینسل کو تو وہ جو بیماری ہے وہ متعدی بیماری، کنٹیجیس ہے، وہ آگے منتقل ہو سکتی ہے. مزید یہ کہ شکار کے لیے کتوں کو ٹرین کرنے کے لیے کہا گیا تو ان کو منہ سے شکار ظاہر وہ کرتے ہیں اپنے دانتوں سے، اور یہ کہا گیا کہ اگر آپ بسم اللہ اللہ اکبر کہہ کے کتے کو، جو ٹرینڈ ڈاگ ہے اس کو آپ بھیجتے ہیں کسی جانور کی شکار کے لیے، تو اس کے دانت جو ہیں وہ ان کے بارے میں کہہ دیا گیا کہ وہ وہی کام کریں گے جو چھری کام کرتی ہے. تو اگر وہ ناپاک ہوتے تو اللہ تعالیٰ یہ کبھی بھی حکم نہ دیتے. تو یہ بہت ہی ڈیپلی روٹڈ غلط فہمی ہے جو مسلمانوں میں پیدا ہو گئی ہے کتوں کے بارے میں.
جی سر.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. Our next question comes from Imran Ahmed. You may ask your question now.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saab. My question is related to Ibrahim alayhi salam. There are many prophets mentioned in the Quran who have special status, like Musa alayhi salam, who spoke to God, and obviously Ibrahim alayhi salam का तो बहुत ही बड़ा है क्योंकि पूरी नस्लें उनसे निकली हैं. But still, there's a comment in the Quran which says that Ibrahim alayhi salam, I believe, is the only one that's referred to as a close friend of Allah Ta'ala. I haven't seen that reference to anybody else. So besides what we might directly read as a translation in the Quran, is there anything that from your knowledge that made him so special to Allah Ta'ala to call him his close friend? Because I haven't heard that reference with regard to any other prophet that you might be able to share, something that we can try to attain or get close to.
Well, I think if you look at the details of the story and the account of Abraham, which is mentioned not only in the Bible and previous scriptures, but also in the Quran, you'll find out that he occupies a very, very unique position. He was the person, of course, we know that he was born in a household to a father who was the head of a patriarchal system, and he was the head of the tribe, and he was a very avid polytheist. And Abraham was the first one to tell him that he is doing something wrong. And we know that he also tried to teach his nation by telling them that if these statues and idols are not able to defend themselves, because we know the episode in which he went and destroyed all the statues and had hung the axe with the largest one. And he actually wanted to make them realize that how can you worship these statues and idols who cannot even defend themselves. And we know that as a result of this, he was thrown in the fire. And then, of course, it was a separate thing that the Almighty did not allow the fire to burn him. And then we know that, of course, he had to migrate from his father. He traveled all the way from Iraq to a place called Ur. He went to Palestine, Jerusalem, as a command of God, and he said that you will be put to various trials and tests, and if you are able to fulfill these trials and tests, then God says, Inni ja'iluka linnasi imama, I will make you the leader of mankind, and people who follow your ways will also remain the leaders of mankind. And we know that he was subjected to various trials, the details of which can be found in the Quran as well, but the greatest of those trials is the one that I just mentioned a while ago, was the sacrifice of his son that he was commanded to do. More so, of course, he was shown in a dream that he needs to sacrifice his son in the way of God. The dream itself meant that he was actually required to dedicate his son for the cause of God, to build the house of God, and then to be of service to that house. But he interpreted that dream literally, and he went about. He had almost put his son to the knife when the Almighty actually stopped him and said that this was not required. Kad saddaqta roya, that you are the one who has fulfilled, and you have made a dream come true, and this was not required. All that was required was to dedicate your son for the house of God. So you see, this is a very, very unique position that he occupied. And not only that, after him, all the prophets and the messengers of God came out of his progeny, and we have two branches of his progeny, the Ishmaelites and the Israelites, taking up and being given this responsibility to communicate the truth to the rest of the world, which is, of course, a very, very unique, not only a unique honor, but a unique responsibility. And also it entailed that if they would not fulfill it, they would be punished in this world as well. So you see, if you have this background in mind, you'll see how this stature which Prophet Abraham commanded, and he's called Khalilullah, which means the friend of God, it becomes justified. And last but not the least, we also know that the Prophet, when he taught the prayer to us, he taught his companions that the durood that is meant for us to send to him, and in that durood he has actually exemplified the stature of Abraham by saying that Allahumma barik kama barakta ala Ibrahim, that, oh God, give blessings the way you have given blessings to the progeny of Abraham and to him, which of course again points to his supreme status. So these are some of the indications. Otherwise, you'll find even more details in the Quran.
What can we aspire to from that as normal human beings, or not being of that nature, but what can we aspire to from that?
What can we
aspire to from learning from that? What can we aspire to?
Well, what we can learn from this whole episode is the unique status which Abraham has occupied, and the way he went about fulfilling the command of the Almighty. without questioning him, becoming an embodiment of obedience. I think the biggest thing that we can even shudder of, we just cannot even think that he had his son put to the knife at the age of 14 or 15 years old when he was himself an 86-year-old man. You just cannot imagine what might have been going through his mind when he was asked to do this, and he did not withhold himself. And not only did he not withhold himself, his son said, "Ya abati if'al ma tu'mar, O my dear father, do as you are commanded." So I think this is an object lesson of a person and of a prophet and his son being an embodiment of obedience to the Almighty. So the word aslama or Muslim is something that is so effectively gauged from the whole life of Abraham, that he was someone who submitted to the command of the Almighty. This is the biggest
Thank you,
lesson
Dr. Shehzad.
we can learn from his life.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Dr. Shehzad. Ruhi Rasool, you may ask your question now.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Sir, my question is about yesterday's lesson. So it's about the groups or a larger group of people, Muslims who spread out to teach Quran to Muslims or other people. Can we say that it sounds parallel to the groups of Tablighi Jamaat people or groups who are organized for this purpose, but they are generally not experts in religion, but are learners themselves mostly?
So this would not be a correct parallel. You see, our friends from the Tablighi Jamaat, the way they conduct their preaching is entirely a different thing. The verse in the Quran that we were studying yesterday is a verse of Surah Tawbah. I think it's verse 123. It refers to the fact that people must become scholars and doctors of religion. So it says لِيَتَفَقَّهُ فِي الدِّينِ, that they must gain sound knowledge of religion, which means that they go into the depth of religion, they understand the scripture, they understand all related disciplines, they are able to interpret and infer from the scripture. So this is not what our Tablighi friends do. They are basically trying to call people in a very simple way to come closer to God. That's more of a education that they might do, or maybe a personal touch in that. So, but this verse is not related in any way to their own style of preaching.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. Our next question comes from Zahoor. You may ask your question now.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Shehzad Saleem.
Wa alaikum
I'm
assalam.
saying California, and I'm staying in the senior community where around 250 condominiums are there, and mostly
Okay.
people who are age 55 and above, they stay. And 98% of my neighbors, they carry dogs with them. Okay.
Okay.
Being a senior community, they want to take care of themselves. So each one of them have, minimum one dog with them. And when we go out for walks, we say hi, hello to all the neighbors. And when they are with the dog comes running, next to us. And keeping in mind that there is I have read somewhere that the dogs are not allowed in Islam. One of the reason is that they could see the angel of death, which is Maulakam Maut. And when that angel of death appears to take the ruh of the master, then the dog starts weeping. So this is one of the reasons that it is not allowed to keep in the house for Muslims other than for security purpose. Now, having said so, if we see a dog which is coming next to us or closer to us, we take a back step. And we don't want that he should touch our body and do our clothes najis. Now, you just said that the saliva of the dog is not najis in itself. Okay. So we are of the opinion that probably if he touches, his tongue touches my clothes, I would need to then change the clothes and then, keep myself purified. So, what is your opinion? Should we take a retreat when the dog comes to us, or are we at the liberty to, put a hand on the dog's head?
Yes, I get your question. So I do understand your question. I think I've just explained earlier on that this is a very grave misconception. Dogs have no such impurity. If they come leaping towards you, they lick you, they lick your trouser or anything else, that does not in any way contaminate you or make you impure or filthy, as is generally understood. Their saliva or their touch is much the same as that of a cat. So just as the cat, when it licks your trouser or touches you, it does not contaminate in any way or makes your trouser filthy. There is absolutely no difference between it and the dog itself. It has been a very, very grave and a very deeply rooted misconception that has actually resulted in this behavior that we see Muslims, I would say, suffering from. So you can, I mean, you don't need to take any evasive action. If dogs come running to you, then let them come and greet you the way they normally do. Of course, they cuddle you, and that is absolutely fine. So, as I said, this misconception has arisen because of two narratives of the Prophet, which I just tried to clarify earlier on. And other than that, if you have a trained dog for your own use or maybe your own neighbor's use, and they are, I mean, of course, benefiting from the service of a dog, we should be actually thankful to such animals, because the more they are, the amount of sincerity that they show at times surpasses human beings.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. Mansoor Ahmed, you may ask your question now.
सर सूरह शोरा में आयत नंबर 23 में एक आयत है जिसको आयत मुअद्दा कहा जाता है, तो इसका दुरुस्त मफहूम क्या है? इसमें बहुत ज्यादा यानी इख्तिलाफ पाया जाता है।
I think I will advise you to look up this tafsir of Ustaz Amin and Islahi or Ustaz Javed and Ghamidi. Have explained it very well, that it does not relate to any personal relationship as is generally understood. It is just telling us that, I mean, the Prophet is not doing something out of any, I mean, he's not asking someone because he has some personal gain to obtain from it. It's just something that he's doing for the cause of God. So this is a brief explanation. I'll advise you to please look up these sources.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. Baran, you may ask your question now.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Sir, my question is, we are advised as Muslims to be always truthful and to always speak the truth, no matter how severe the consequences might be. But is it allowed, like, for example, to, I want to say, call it a white lie, like a small lie, in order to not disturb the peace or relationship you have with someone, for example, a spouse, if she asks if she looks good and you honestly don't think she looks good, but you just tell her that she does look good. Are these kind of white lies allowed that do not have like a big impact on?
Well, yes, I think that these actually, I mean, you just cannot say that they are true statements, but the nature of their falsehood is such that you're not harming anyone, you're not infringing on the rights of anyone, and as such, if you have a certain situation at hand in which you would like to remedy that situation, or maybe create love and affection between a spouse or between people who might be daggers drawn, who might be far apart. So I guess this is something that can be done.
Thank you very much.
There's a question in the chat. Often women are not allowed to travel alone through the mention of a hadith where it is mentioned how bad it is to travel alone. So what about those female students living in hostels or those studying abroad or moving? Or even
Again,
those that have to...
Right.
Yes.
So this hadith has been grossly misunderstood. It does not relate to, I mean, circumstances in which traveling can be done in a safe environment, in a safe atmosphere. In the times of the Prophet, we know when women would travel for long distances, they would be molested, they would be looted and plundered if they would travel alone. So basically, the Prophet said that in order to protect themselves, they should have some chaperones, some people along with them, and the best person, of course, would be a mahram relative who can take care of a woman when she's alone. So basically, this is a precautionary directive given in certain circumstances. It's not an eternal directive. It's not a directive of the Sharia. And today, if women can travel alone in a safe environment, in a safe way, as normally they can in cars or in buses or in airplanes, then this directive does not relate to the situation.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. There was another question. Was that a lot of now and then we hear that when a person dies, he knows that he's dead now, or there are certain things when people say that when he is dead, he doesn't know, he thinks he's sleeping, or he sees himself. So what is your what does Quran say anything about it, or how does the person know that he's dead now? I mean, is there anything?
I think I have to go through the experience to give an answer, but to be honest, this is something that we can never know. Whether a person is dead or not, once he is dead, he's not going to come back. So we don't have an afterlife experience being narrated to us. Yes, there have been instances in which the heart of a person has stopped for, let's say, 60 seconds or more than that. And we find, channels like National Geographic and other similar scientific channels who do at times give us these stories that people who have come back from death, and that, of course, refers to clinical death in which the heart has stopped and the brain is still functioning. So they narrate their experiences. So I think this is just a personal experience that they might narrate, and they could be right in their experiences. They could be under some delusion or even some hallucination. So at the end of the day, actually, it doesn't matter also, because it's like, it's something that it's like an esoteric phenomena that a person might experience, but I don't think it can have any effect on our life or on our faith. So it is best that we leave it to itself.
So all of these things that we read or hear of people relating
we cannot verify them. You see, these are personal experiences which people have narrated. They can be absolutely true, but then what exactly can we infer? Even if they are true, they don't make any. They don't have any impact on our lives and on our faith or anything else. They are just stories and accounts which might be true, but then, as I said, they don't have any consequence.
And not Allah or neither the Prophet has not said anything about it, right? Not
to the best of my knowledge.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating, and thank you, Dr. Shehzad, especially. That is all for today. We will see you all, inshallah, tomorrow. Have a great rest of the day. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.